Hello, and welcome to Star Wars Breaking Canon, a podcast where we break down and analyze each live-action entry in the Star Wars universe, from the original trilogy to The Mandalorian and beyond. I'm James Callahan.
I'm Joseph McCorkle.
I'm Julius Freeman.
On today's episode, we're discussing 1980's Star Wars Episode 5, The Empire Strikes Back, written by Lee Brackett and Lawrence Kasdan, and directed by Irvin Kershner. Joseph, why don't you start us off with your first impressions of The Empire Strikes Back and how you feel about the film now?
This one I was very excited about because this is my favorite Star Wars movie. So far, as we go through this rewatch, it's still holding as my favorite. And the reason why is that it's just pitch perfect. Every element of this just fits together like a symphony. And I love it. And I hadn't seen it in a long time, probably maybe over 5 years. And watching it again, it still holds true. It's still every character's line reading, every surge of the John Williams score, every scene transition. It's all just a nonstop ride, and I loved it.
Julius, what did you think?
I can't follow that, man. That was fucking pitch perfect. That was pitch perfect. I can't follow that. I can't follow Joseph's, introduction. I'm gonna just have to say I agree with everything that he just said, because that's exactly the way I feel about The Empire Strikes Back. So I'm not gonna add anything to that. That was pitch perfect, Joseph. So
you guys basically are both in agreement that this is probably the best Star Wars movie?
Oh yeah, or none.
So does that mean you're going to give it a 9 this time, or?
No, I'm going to give it a 6. That's what I'm going to give it.
I actually don't really like Star Wars. I don't know why I'm on this podcast, but no, that was perfectly said, Joseph. I feel very similar to this. And I know on our last episode, I was talking a lot about how I appreciate A New Hope as maybe being like quintessential Star Wars. It's a standalone film. It's a movie that I can just put on and watch, and I don't really need the context of anything else because it's such a self-contained film. And then I rewatched The Empire Strikes Back, and I was like, oh, that's right. This movie basically takes everything that A New Hope did, and it does it better in every single regard. Yeah. And so, yeah, I don't think I could make the argument that A New Hope is a better film, except to say that maybe in terms of its place in film history, maybe it has a little bit more importance to it. But I don't know, guys. I think May 21st, 1980, cinema peaked. I don't think we ever got a better movie after that. So I kind of feel like this one's going to be just sort of like a boring episode of us just heaping gobs and gobs of praise on this movie. Can you guys tell me a little bit about the first experience that you had watching this movie? Because this is one of few films that had like this immediate impression on me. And I want to get your guys' take before I let you guys know. So Julius, tell me about the first time you saw this.
Oh, wow. So long ago. I could only encapsulate the experience with one word, and that's epic. I remember feeling like I was watching something epic the first time I watched this. I must have been maybe 11 or 12 when I watched it. Because at that time, I didn't really know about sequels. I didn't really know about, there's a second part to this. Like, I didn't know. Like, sequels were foreign to me. I always thought they were just one movie and one and done, and you're done. So when I found out they actually made a sequel, then that's when I was like, what? They made a second one? And then I watched it and, rented it from the VHS store. And, like I said, I just remember it being epic. The whole thing. And of course, the end, that final lightsaber duel between Vader and Skywalker was just absolutely just jaw-dropping. It's like, what? He's his father? His father? And she chopped off his wrist? Oh, man, this is out of this world. So, that's the only impression I could think of. Epic. That's it.
Okay, so when you saw the film for the first time, you didn't know the reveal.
No, I didn't know. I had no idea that it was his father. I just knew he was a bad dude. He wanted to kill Skywalker because, my 11-year-old brain was like, oh, he's just mad because he destroyed the Death Star in the first one, and he wants revenge. That's why he wants to get him. He wants revenge for destroying the Death Star. But then, of course, you find out that, holy crap. And of course, it changes the whole thing after that. After that, I was like, wow, this is Shakespearean before I even knew who Shakespeare was.
It changes the entire temperature of the franchise. And,
absolutely.
At that point, it was only 2 films, but I think one of the things that is so effective about this movie is that it challenges everything in the first movie. And in a lot of ways, I think there are definitely sequels that are on the same level as The Empire Strikes Back. And the ones that are on that same level, I think they succeed because they challenge that first movie. And I'm thinking like Godfather 2, I'm thinking of The Dark Knight, and I'm also thinking of Terminator 2, which that was also a movie where I went into it knowing the twist, and I've always wondered what it would be like to not know the twist. And that's how I feel with Empire Strikes Back. Like, I did go into the movie knowing the twist. I expected it to come. But the thing I did not expect was for the movie to basically end on a cliffhanger. And I had never seen that in my entire life. And so, Joseph, when you first saw the movie, did you know that about the reveal? And did you know about the cliffhanger ending?
I did not. And I don't know if you remember this, but the first time I saw it, it was when you showed it to me. We watched it together in your living room in high school. And I really didn't know anything about Empire Strikes Back. And I certainly didn't really realize like the cultural impact that this movie had back in 1980. I mean, it's like some kind of peak cinema moment for sure. And I luckily got to pretty much experience that spoiler free.
When I was listening back to our episode, and I think even at the time when we were recording, I was like, nah, he's got to have his history wrong a little bit there. There's no way you saw this movie in high school, because I would have sworn that, you had seen the movies and you knew all of those twists like before that. But I don't know. I guess my memory was warped, because I definitely remember us watching the movies many times. I'm shocked that you didn't know that. Was I just like sitting there staring at you, waiting for the reveal to happen so I could see the reaction?
I have kind of a funny story about that. And I think I said on the last episode, I saw A New Hope in theaters with the special edition release.
Right.
And in 8th grade, before I met you, Star Wars is actually like a bonding experience for me and a couple other friends. And I remember like, they were like, you've seen Star Wars, right? And like, I was like, yeah, hell yeah. And then like, they're like, talking about Empire and Return of the Jedi. And I was like, yeah, oh, right. I know what you're talking about. Of course. I just, so it was kind of like, I was kind of trying to fit in. So I might've been playing that off to you when we first met.
I guess I'm not really surprised, just in the sense that I think we all kind of did that as kids, where when there's something that's like, clearly popular and you don't want to be the one to admit that you hadn't seen it. That is really interesting that you saw it for the first time. Like, such a long period of time went by. And it's weird too, because I think for me with Empire, I had the reveal spoiled for me based on just seeing, references to it on like The Simpsons and in popular culture. Yeah, there's that famous gag where Homer's walking out of the movie theater. It's just like, can't believe that Vader's Luke's father. And,
buddy.
Yeah, exactly. So good. I remember there being a commercial because there was a huge like marketing blitz when the special editions came out.
Yeah.
And I remember like all kinds of, different companies were tying in, different Star Wars references. And I remember it might've been like for a grocery store or something. And there was somebody acting out moments in the Star Wars movies, like right before I went to go see the re-release. And like in one of them, it's someone dressed like with a bucket on their head or something and doing the Darth Vader impression and saying, "Luke, I am your father." I'm like, okay, great. Now I know that's coming. So, but so I remember watching this movie for the first time and knowing, okay, the reason he's trying to track Luke down isn't because he blew up the Death Star necessarily. It's because that's his son. And, I can only think of one other time in my life where I saw a movie and I could not believe that the film ended where it ended. The other one is The Fellowship of the Ring, where I actually thought the movie was just getting cooking when they go over that, over that mountain and they're heading over to Mordor, and then it rolls credits. And I was like, wait, what? This doesn't end with the ring getting destroyed? And I remember feeling the same way with Empire. Like, where's the resolution? Like, I was so into the movie. I remember being so pumped. Like, it's so much more dramatic and engaging in terms of character as opposed to A New Hope. And it does such a great job of challenging the characters in such compelling ways. And then to just end it before there's any resolution whatsoever, I had to immediately watch Return of the Jedi. I watched it that same day because I was like, I couldn't handle not being able to know what happened next. Going back to kind of walking through what's happening in this movie without knowing about why Vader is pursuing Luke to the extent that he is, I do think it's interesting that as you're watching it, you have to wonder what is going on in the Empire to justify that the guy who just basically blew up probably the most expensive thing the Empire has ever spent money on. They don't actually want to kill him and make an example of him. They want to recruit him. And I have to wonder what the Empire kind of thought of that at the time. Like, were they being secretive about that? Were they, because I imagine that the Empire's propaganda was out in force. And like, I would think they would portray Luke as being a terrorist, right?
Yeah, I think, I believe that the Empire, the bureaucratic system that was built by Palpatine, was very compartmentalized. So they didn't tell everyone everything. Kind of like the system we have here in America today, where it's all compartmentalized. So whenever anyone gets caught doing something wrong, it's like, well, it was that department, not us. We had no idea about what was going on with that. And I think that the recruitment of Luke Skywalker was definitely some kind of secret mission that Darth Vader and Palpatine were conducting, and the generals, like for instance, that asteroid scene where they're afraid to enter the asteroid, a field to capture Han Solo and Princess Leia, and Vader's like, I don't care, go in there and get him, because he knows what the bottom line is, and that is getting to Leia so that way they can lure Luke out and get them to try to save them. So yeah, I think it was secret. I would say it was a secret mission for sure.
In A New Hope, it seems like Vader and the Imperial apparatus are like two different branches that are kind of at loggerheads with each other. So I could see that Palpatine would probably like play them off of each other. So the rank and file in the Empire might not be happy about the various like ancient religious stuff that's going on with
right.
the Sith,
right?
But they're two different factions of Palpatine's like power,
which might explain why you have Admiral Ozzel acting like a low rent Grand Moff Tarkin, trying to like, I don't know, like push Vader around a little bit in the beginning. I love when he's like kind of just sort of like placating Vader, like, oh come on, we have like thousands of probe droids out there, like there's no way that this Hoth base and and Vader's like, no, that's it. That's where we're going. And I've always found it so interesting that you have Ozzel who is questioning Vader and just like kind of willfully like not listening to him and disobeying him.
Oh,
like, did no one send him a memo that this guy can force choke and do it like somehow on video? Like
maybe they did, and he was like, kids magic, myth. That's fake. That's not real. And then he found out soon enough that it was real.
Yeah, I mean, he had to have been alive during the Republic, and maybe he just like never came across a Jedi and thought like all of that was silly nonsense until he gets choked mid-sentence while he's telling Vader, like giving him an update on their progress. It's so funny.
It does seem like it'd be very Imperial to downplay things like that aren't part of the order that they're trying to create in the galaxy.
Right. Yeah.
In terms of canon, this film takes place 3 years after the events of A New Hope. And it also, for some weird reason, I think that this is like also the timeline that we reference everything in Star Wars is like before the Battle of Yavin and after the Battle of Yavin. I don't know why we wouldn't talk, pre-Empire, post-Empire, but yeah, that's like the point where like, everything else is measured by on the timeline. I don't know, when I first found out that this movie takes place 3 years after A New Hope, I had a really hard time wrapping my head around what like all of the things that could have happened in those intervening 3 years. And it's just really interesting because this movie does feel like it takes place a little bit after A New Hope, but I don't know, it doesn't really feel like the characters have progressed in a way that you'd think, oh wow, 3 years has passed. And like, these guys are at the top of the most wanted list. Luke Skywalker's got to be like, public enemy number one in the Empire. And so it's kind of crazy to think, wow, they've lasted 3 years and what did they go through?
I actually still have my first edition Splinter of the Mind's Eye, which takes place between A New Hope and Empire Strikes Back, and I believe was the very first novel in the Star Wars universe.
That's right. I remember trying to read that when I think I was in junior high, and even at that point, it already felt kind of like it didn't really fit in the what at the time was sort of like the literary canon of Star Wars.
Right.
It felt very much like something that was written before The Empire Strikes Back, and the characters are a little strange and they don't really feel like the characters that you're familiar with, much in the same way that I'm sure like a lot of the like decanoned books, the what is it, Star Wars Legends, they call that now. I mean, I'm sure we'll talk about this a lot throughout the course of the podcast. Have a very hard time getting into like literary Star Wars. That's one of the reasons why I wanted to cover just like live action Star Wars.
Says the guy who's read like 30 Star Wars books.
Look, it took me 30 to realize I don't like them very much. Okay. So one of the things that I think is interesting about where we pick up with Luke Skywalker, we just saw him destroy the Death Star. And when we pick up in The Empire Strikes Back, it seems like maybe his like sort of like newfound celebrity and just being kind of the hero of the rebellion has kind of gotten to his head. And I kind of really love that in our opening scene, he gets taken down by a snow creature that if he was using the Force, he should have basically seen coming. And this is kind of like the recurring motif and theme of this movie, and also of this hero's journey, is like the entire movie is about Luke messing up. Like he fails at every single thing, every task he fails at. And he still has this hot-headed like perspective on things, no matter how many times he fails. Like he almost dies in the first act of this movie. And if he had, can you imagine like if Vader found out like, yeah, he got killed by a Wampa and just, ate him up. Bummer.
Yeah, it was very, very tragic. It was a tragic event.
I would imagine Vader would be like, oh, well, okay. I mean, maybe we shouldn't have spent so many resources on trying to find this moron. It's really compelling the way that this movie challenges Luke as a hero, and it makes his character, I don't know, his character strikes me as, I don't want to say annoying, because I really appreciate his journey. But, in the first film, he is annoying to some extent. He's definitely very excited to join the fight and be a rebel and all of that. But he definitely feels like he's very immature. And in this movie, it's more like, oh, blowing up the Death Star kind of went to his head. And now he can tell Yoda off anytime he wants to and second guess Yoda in ways that I just find like actually really rude.
Yeah, he is for sure. I think it's he's like we all go through in our 20s, right? We're adults now, but yet we're still stuck in our teenage ways. So it's the 20s, I feel, is a decade where we learn from our mistakes as we keep making them and then mature into our 30s. So perhaps Empire is kind of like Luke Skywalker's 20s, where he's still, a little mature as a teenager, but at the same time, he wants to grow. He wants to get better. He wants to mature because he wants to be a Jedi Master. That's his goal. That's his intention.
It seems to me like Luke kind of wants to skip becoming a Jedi Knight and go straight to Master. And
yeah,
I don't know, like I kind of get the impression that he hasn't spent much time in the intervening 3 years actually practicing the Force. In fact, when he reaches out for his lightsaber, you almost get the feeling he's like, oh shit, how do I do this again? All right, I gotta close my eyes,
Yeah, you're right. And that's why Obi-Wan's ghost, told him, hey, you need to go to Dagobah and get trained by Yoda because you ain't getting it. You're not getting it yet.
He's like, yeah, Qui-Gon and I have just been kind of watching over you, and we're just like, we're just not impressed. We are not impressed with your progress, lack thereof.
This kid's fucking up.
Yeah. Which leads me to a question that I've had kind of like in the back of my mind, and forget the books. I don't want to really talk about the books necessarily. Like, the impression that I get from this movie is that this is the first time Obi-Wan has presented himself in 3 years. Like maybe the last time he heard him, he's even thinking like, did I just imagine that voice in the back of my head when I was blowing up the Death Star? Like did Obi-Wan really speak to me, or was I just imagining that? And the way that Luke reacts when he's in the snow, you almost get the sense even later on that he's like, did I hallucinate all of that? Like, why am I on this swamp planet? I don't understand the rules of Jedi spirits presenting themselves to people. Like, they seem to do it at the moment the plot needs it, but when the character could really use it, they're just kind of nowhere to be found. Very curious about the rules when it comes to that.
I don't think we should focus on the rules. Don't try to understand it as the line from the movie Tenet. Don't try to understand it. Feel it.
That's a great cop-out for a writer, you know. It's just to be like, hey, you know, don't worry about the plot mechanics of this. Just feel it, okay?
Just feel it.
Trust me, all right?
And that's what the cinematic experience should be. It should be about feeling, not trying to understand things. That's why a lot of great films that do stand the test of time is because it made people feel something.
Yeah, honestly, I think that's what's so strong about the Force as a cinematic concept, is that it's like it works in universe, but it's like an art element in itself. And like that's part of that's why that 3-act structure of A New Hope is so strong. It's like all one piece leading you to that moment of blowing up the Death Star, and it's just a visceral ride, you know?
In a lot of ways, The Empire Strikes Back is sort of the inverse of A New Hope. I noted when I was watching it this time that it actually opens with like a big battle, and the battle's incredible on Hoth, but it doesn't end with a big battle in the same way that A New Hope did. It actually ends on a very, like, it basically kind of like reduces itself all the way down to like the bare essentials, which are just the characters, and breaking them down to the point that when you leave at the end, you're just like, will they ever recover from this? Like, it almost feels like, you know, this sort of like negates everything that they did in A New Hope. It's like almost like it doesn't matter. The Empire indeed struck back in this film. Yeah. And it's one of those things that struck me so much. I still remember vividly my first experience seeing this movie. And it's why it's so effective going back and watching it every time I've watched it, is because you don't get a lot of movies where you have, it's in a lot of ways, it's very ambitious to do that in a sequel. There is a chance that you could put off your viewers and who are like, oh my God, like Luke is my hero. And now I just spent, 2 hours watching him fuck up in every single scene. Like, do I even like this character anymore?
Well, that's up for debate, because I felt very satisfied in the end, personally, when I first watched it, because what was the triumph for me was that he chose to die as opposed to joining Vader to take over the Empire. He says, you know what? I'd rather just jump.
I was kind of wondering if it was a bit of a cop-out for him to take that leap, though, because couldn't he like pretend to turn to the dark side just to kind of like, Vader to just be like, all right, come on, let's go. Let's go to my Star Destroyer really quick. And
that is a slippery slope.
Yeah, very slippery. Very slippery.
It's like, hey, I'll do some heroin with you and hopefully I don't become addicted. Like, yeah.
I mean, the dark side is insidious. It seeps into you. That's the whole thing, is that people think they can control it, and it doesn't work like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a very quick, steep, slippery slope for sure. So you have this big epic battle on Hoth, and then the movie takes another, I think, huge risk by separating the characters. And it's kind of amazing to me because this movie, has always existed. It's always been the way that it is. I didn't experience this movie for the first time in 1980. I experienced it nearly 20 years later. So to me, like, this movie has always kind of been scripture, but kind of like going back, it's interesting that you split your characters up and you've just basically established the chemistry that they have, but you're like, okay, Luke needs to go on his own. He needs to continue his hero's journey, and he really can't do that with the baggage of Han, Leia, and the rest of the friends being there. So you have this incredible chase where Vader is trying to hunt down the Millennium Falcon through the asteroids and, hiring bounty hunters and all kinds of stuff that he's doing. And it's so like viscerally exciting, all of that. Like, the chase through the asteroids is so iconic. It's such a great like Star Wars thing. And, it feels like Star Tours, when you're flying, you're in the Falcon, you're flying through those asteroids, and 3PO's freaking out the entire time. And it's so beautifully done. And yeah, like, you have Vader who's just like full speed ahead, asteroids do not concern me. I want that ship no matter what. Yeah. I love the part where he's getting a briefing from all of the different holograms, and one of them is disrupted because it just got hit by an asteroid.
Yeah.
It's like Vader doesn't even flinch. He's just like, it doesn't matter as long as I get that Millennium Falcon.
Yeah, Vader was he must have devoured Grand Moff Tarkin's soul after he died in that Death Star, because he was a total freaking asshole in this movie. But I had to admire his true spot. He went for it. It's like, I'm gonna get this, and I don't care what's in my way, and I don't care who's in my way. I'm gonna get that damn ship, and I'm gonna get Skywalker. And it's one of those things I admire from a writer's perspective. It's like, that's such a good character, a great antithesis to the heroes who want the same thing, essentially the same. They want the same goal, but just in different ends of the spectrum. You know, Vader wants total control, whereas the rebellion is like total freedom. So it's a cool. Yeah, I just wanted to notate that Vader was absolutely a badass in this one.
He's a better character in this film than he even was in the last movie. You know, he's kind of more of this like mechanical boogeyman in the previous film, but in this one, he fills the vacuum that's left by Tarkin dying, and just kind of like picks up where Tarkin left off, but obviously has, you know, much more of a, you know, is far more emotionally engaged with what the Empire is trying to do at this point, which is like, it's almost like they don't even care about the rebels. It's just like Palpatine and Vader are just super excited that there's another Jedi out there, a chosen one type that they can seduce and hopefully bring to the dark side. And then the two of them will work out who gets to live once they do that.
Yeah. That's kind of the unspoken part of it.
I don't know. I was actually wondering during this movie if being a Sith is kind of like being in an open marriage.
It sounds exhausting, frankly.
Yeah, very exhausting. Yeah, I would imagine. Yeah, I would imagine that's how Joseph Stalin's administration must have felt like when they had power. It's like, oh my God, which one of us is going to die today for saying the wrong thing or doing the wrong thing or undermining a guy that's favored by Stalin, or so on and so forth.
If I got a promotion at work and it entailed like also having to witness my predecessor get murdered, I wouldn't feel very comfortable in that work environment anymore. Yeah. You can kind of see the look on Admiral Piet's face throughout this movie where he's just like, every time he's enjoying his new position of power, he's also reminded like, oh, right, I actually was there when my predecessor got choked to death, and that I'm next in line for that if I don't get this ship. Which is so funny because at the very end, I love that look on his face.
Yeah, exactly. That was exactly what I was going to mention, was that look of like, oh crap, he's going to think that disable the the light speed thing in the Millennium Falcon, and now he's going to kill me. But he was lucky that Vader found the soft spot because of what Luke did, his sacrifice to not join him.
I get the impression that Vader is so exhausted by the end of this movie that he just doesn't even have it in him to kill Piet. He's just like, whatever. What does it matter? Like, it's over.
Yeah, that's a good observation. Yeah, you're right. Because the whole movie, he's just on go. The whole movie, like 10, go. And then, yeah, you're right. I can see that he's kind of like, all right, I'll just do it tomorrow. Fuck it.
So I don't know if you would call Han and Leia's trying to evade the Empire as being like the A plot or the B plot of this movie, because in a lot of ways they're affecting the plot more than Luke is, especially when you find out that this entire thing is basically Vader trying to capture them so that Luke will reach out in the Force and see that his friends are in trouble. And I even remember the first time I saw this movie, like feeling like it was so clearly communicated to me that that's what Vader was doing. And it's ingenious to me, like every time I rewatch this movie, that is what Vader is doing, is trying to lure Luke out through the Force. And that like Yoda also kind of knows that that's what Vader is doing. And it's an interesting thing. But going back to, Luke, when he leaves Hoth and he goes to Dagobah, when you guys first saw this movie, did you know that Yoda was the annoying little childlike creature that was giving Luke a hard time?
No, I did not. As a kid, I had no idea. I was expecting him to lead him to Yoda, and I was expecting the same thing as Luke, this great warrior, long hair, beard, old, rugged, big guy. That's what I imagined in my head when they said Yoda. But of course, the twist when you find out that that's him, that's the master. You're like, oh crap, wow, I would have failed too if I was in Skywalker's shoes.
Yeah, I was lucky to watch this film in a state of non-spoilers and also like high naivete, I guess.
Yeah, I have to imagine that you were exposed to spoilers. You just didn't put two and two together, because I feel like when I saw this movie, I knew that Yoda was the creature. But I think when I was watching, I was like, wait, maybe this is just like one of like the dumb versions of this creature. Like he can't even talk in the right way. So like maybe he's going to lead him to the smarter, wiser version of this species. Yeah. And then there's that like immediate reveal when he's like, I can't train this guy. And then Obi-Wan chimes in. And you imagine Obi-Wan's like biting his tongue the entire time. Like, God damn it, Luke, come on. Like, he's right in front of you. Can't you feel the force emanating from this little guy? Like, come on, Luke.
These damn Skywalkers.
Yeah, they're a real hassle. They are a real hassle.
It's always something with these guys.
So Luke begins his training, which basically entails him like running through the forest and jumping from vines and things like that. I guess it's like how long does it take to undergo the trials of a Jedi? It's like, what, 20 years? So Yoda's trying to condense it all into 24 hours.
Yeah.
That's one of the retcons that bothered me when the sequels came out, which was, it was like, man, you kind of ruined Empire, because now you kind of made almost, not quite exactly, but you almost made Skywalker into Mary Sue, almost, not entirely. But I think if maybe Lucas would have thought about it a little bit more, he could have done, maybe instead of 20 years, it could have been like 5 years or something like that. Then,
the case could be made that this is a part of the like over-regimentation that took the Jedi down. Does it really take 20 years?
Yeah. You're right.
Kind of like the padding in our own school system. It's like, come on, you could do high school in a year. Yeah. You don't really need to spread that out.
Yeah.
What I think is actually remarkable is that I used to make fun of like the Jedi training in this, especially after like Phantom Menace and Attack of the Clones came out, and you realize like how extensive the Jedi training was. I was like, oh, like all Luke had to do was just like, cross from one vine to the other and he's automatically a Jedi. Like it just seems like it got easy after the Jedi Temple was destroyed and the Jedi Order. But I think actually what this whole thing was about was that basically there's 3 trials that Luke undergoes. And it's the cave, it's the X-Wing, and it's overcoming this vision. And I think that's actually what Yoda was doing the entire time, was like, I'm going to test you and you're probably going to fail each time, which is going to prove my point that maybe you're not cut out for this.
Yeah. And I mean, like taking it away from like the like explicit idea of training, like it's very dreamlike, and it very much has like the structure and like the emotional content of a dream. And it's almost like it doesn't matter if this was actually like a regimented training. It worked for the emotional beats that it needed.
Definitely. And when Yoda is tricking Luke in the beginning, I guess that's also kind of a test, and he failed that too.
It is a test.
Yeah. So but I remember when I was a kid, and I mean, even like rewatching this movie over and over, that cave scene really kind of freaked me out when I was a kid, in part because of just how ambiguous it is to, I think, like an 11-year-old, like, it's kind of, it's very symbolic and like, it's easy to understand now, but I remember seeing it as a kid and being like, what is happening here? I don't understand any of this. And I really think that, Lucas and Kasdan deserve a lot of credit for just having a scene that's just completely quiet, that isn't really explained. It's just, Yoda doesn't tell him afterwards, like, okay, so the vision that you saw was this, and this is why this thing. Like, I can imagine a lot of kids watching that and just being like, Vader just got decapitated, but it's Luke's head. What does all of this mean?
It's very potent.
Very potent, yeah. And I think that scene was probably written for the adults, the adults audience, when that were watching the movie anyway, before it became a childhood phenomenon. I think the children came into it in the 90s, VHS, and also the special editions when they came out. That's probably when more kids started watching Star Wars.
Yeah, because I remember seeing, I think there was one time I may have rewatched the movie like in high school or something, and then I saw that scene and I was like I think it finally hit me like what all of that meant. And basically, like, not only is it kind of foreshadowing that Luke is going to find out that Vader is his father and that there is a bond there beyond just like that's my enemy, but it it's also like, oh, this is who I could become. I'm very much susceptible to becoming this.
It's the idea of, because the Force is a very powerful, thing, right? In the Star Wars universe. So I would imagine, like, we look at the phrase knowledge is power, cult leaders, right? For instance, use that knowledge and use it to enslave people mentally. Because that's the form of power, right? Because they have knowledge that maybe the followers don't have, and maybe what George Lucas was trying to convey here with the scene is pretty much telling the audience, like, look, you get power, you're either going to have to be good or you're going to have to be evil, because it could go both ways. Because power itself is not, it's like it's objective, or it's neutral. It's just there, and people who grasp it can either use it for good or use it for bad. And I think that's the idea that Lucas was trying to convey with the Force, and that scene where Yoda was trying to showed Luke that, yeah, you can easily become Darth Vader if you just take one bad step, just like your father did.
The nature of the Force is elaborated on in this film in really interesting ways. And a lot of that comes from the perspective of Yoda. And when we last spoke and we talked about A New Hope, Julius, you had mentioned, you basically had brought that up in the last episode about, like, the Force is it's neutral. It's kind of like whoever picks up and what they decide to do with it. And I was thinking about that a little bit while I was watching this film. And, it's there where, you see the might of Vader being basically the extreme example of what you can do with the Force on the dark side. And you've seen Obi-Wan as kind of like the opposite of that. And when we're introduced to Yoda, it's like, well, wait a minute. Like, the Force can be powerful to something that's like 2 feet tall. It can be just as powerful. And I don't need to see Yoda jumping around with his lightsaber to realize that he's like the baddest Jedi in the galaxy. Like, it's almost better to just see him with his little walking stick and not see him do any of that. Because, yeah, like there's the moment in the beginning when Luke is struggling to pull his lightsaber. And I think that he equates usage of the Force as being like just how big an object is, which is why he thinks, pulling the X-Wing out of the water is impossible to do. And, Yoda, who is, 2 feet tall, just, pulls that thing right out of the water.
Which was a great scene, by the way. That was a fantastic scene. And, that line, man, it always gets me when he's like, what do you tell him? That is why you fail. And that is why you fail. That was a great ending to that scene. I was like, wow, man, that's such a powerful, like it just hits you. For me, it hit me hard. I was like, damn, dude, you just got shown up by a 2-foot gremlin, Luke.
Yeah, right. It's so great too, because it's almost like they took all of the, Obi-Wan's amazing wisdom from the first film, and then just rewrote the lines backwards and then gave them to Yoda to speak. And he seemed even more profound, hearing it from that perspective and kind of delivered in that way. So on the flip side with Han and Leia, they end up on Cloud City, and we're introduced to Lando Calrissian. My favorite. A great character. I love this guy so much.
Yeah.
And I can't remember when I saw the movie if I knew that he was going to betray Han and Leia. I think it's very funny that he's just shamelessly flirting with Leia, even on his way to then turn them into Vader. Like, it's really sad that he's doing that like minutes before, I've just made a deal with the Empire that'll keep them out of here forever. Boom, there's Vader. And I got to give Han a lot of credit here. He didn't waste any time pulling a gun and trying to shoot him. Like,
yeah.
Again, proving why he is probably the greatest character in all of Star Wars. Yeah, immediately sees Vader and pulls his gun out. Does not waste time. Han shot first.
Yeah. Which just, you're right. It does showcase how badass Han Solo is. That even when faced with Darth Vader, the most sinister character in the universe, in the Star Wars universe, who can use the Force, who could choke you with just simply by thinking it. And the first thing he does, I'm going to just blast you. I don't care if I get a shot in or not. And that was pretty great that he did that.
So when was the first time that you guys realized that this movie wasn't directed by George Lucas?
In the credits. After the movie was over.
Right.
I was like, oh, Lucas didn't direct this.
What age were you though? Like, because I wasn't really paying attention to that kind of stuff when I was a kid, so I didn't realize it until I think a few years later.
I did, because even from a young age, I was always curious as to who made movies. And I remember when as a kid, I one day asked my dad, hey, how come the actors who the characters in the movies don't have the same name as their real life names. Like, why don't they just use the real names? Yeah. and then my dad had to sit me down and explain to me, oh, it's because they're playing characters and they're actors. And it's like, oh, okay, so people make movies? And I was like, yeah. And then so I got my education from my dad, because my dad always took me to the cinema theater to like when I was a kid. So so I knew I wasn't like too knowledgeable about it. I just knew that in the end, the name of the person who directed will come up, and I always paid attention. And I remember when I watched New Hope, I saw George Lucas. And so when I watched Empire for the first time, and I saw the credits, I was like, oh, George Lucas didn't direct this. Irvin Kershner?
It's Irvin Kershner.
Irvin Kershner. So yeah, that was a pleasant surprise, because he was such a better director than George Lucas, in my opinion. I think if George Lucas had directed Empire, it wouldn't have been as powerful as it is now, as we know it.
Wait a minute. Are you trying to say that the director of Attack of the Clones wouldn't have done a better job on Empire?
Yes, that's exactly what I'm saying.
Okay.
It's exactly what I'm saying.
Yeah, I kind of agree.
Because he just had an understanding of actors, and if you don't have good acting in your movie, it ruins your movie. So that's why it was good that Lucas stepped back and said, okay, you know what? I'm just going to step back and be producer and story writer of it, and hire screenwriters to help me write what I want on screen, and hire a good director that I know will get the job done and will follow what I guide him to do. And it worked. It was just an instance of how everything just came together beautifully.
Joseph, was it something that mattered to you, like who directed a movie? Were you even thinking about that? Was that on your radar? Like, did it ever shock you to realize, like, oh wait, George Lucas didn't direct this second movie? Like, what happened there? Did he get demoted?
I remember that, in the prequel era, I was a George Lucas detractor, and that was, I attributed like the strength of this movie to the fact that George Lucas was more hands off. From the start of being aware of what a director actually does, it seemed like a good idea to me that this guy was, he was like off at Skywalker Ranch, I believe, and like not even on location most of the time. Like he was kind of basically like just on the phone, checking the dailies and stuff like that. And I feel like, yeah, that's good. You do the world building. We'll hire some like actual filmmakers to, shoot the film.
Yeah. Exactly.
It's an impulse that I wish that he had on everything going forward, especially for somebody who is so vocal about how much he hates directing, and especially how much he hates directing actors. He sure seems to insist on doing a lot of directing. It's very strange. And by all accounts, it was an improvement for the actors, because they were working with a director who valued his actors and knew how to work with the actors. And I actually listened to the commentary track on the movie, and Kershner participates, and you can immediately tell that he is bringing the perspective of a director, because he is so detail oriented when it comes to the motivations of the characters and coming up with little character human moments. And it's funny. It's kind of like listening to your grandpa, who doesn't really understand like the sci-fi bullshit of the movie, but is very much invested in the emotions of the characters. And I think that's why the performances and the characters are so much better in this film than pretty much any of the other Star Wars movies. In addition to that, you've also got the guy who is going to go on to write Raiders of the Lost Ark, who's basically writing the screenplay. And I mean, is there a better flex in the history of cinema to write The Empire Strikes Back and Raiders of the Lost Ark within like 2 years? It's nuts.
Yeah, those are two good years right there.
I don't think he ever lived up to that promise. But
what else has he done? Do you know anything offhand?
I guess so. From my understanding, well, we'll talk about it more when we talk about Jedi, but I guess he only agreed to do Return of the Jedi if Lucas would help him get his directorial debut off the ground, which was Body Heat. And I've seen Body Heat, and Body Heat's good. It's solid.
Wait, who are we talking about? Who are we talking about?
Kasdan, Lawrence Kasdan.
Oh, Lawrence Kasdan. Oh, I see. Joseph, were you asking about Kasdan's work?
I was asking about Irvin Kershner.
Oh, Kershner. Okay.
So I've never actually seen anything that Irvin Kershner has directed beyond The Empire Strikes Back. I think it's just kind of like Flash Gordon, where I've just been like, hey, this guy, Flash Gordon, obviously influenced one of my favorite franchises. I should maybe go and check that out sometime. I never did. Same thing with The Empire Strikes Back. I'm like, hey, Irvin Kershner directed one of my all-time favorite movies. I should check out his other stuff. And I still haven't. But I find it very inspiring, or I find it very inspired on Lucas's part that he actually like outsourced the directing job to one of his teachers, which feels, very, very much like a Lucas move, because he is kind of like an iconoclast in the industry. And I think that everyone would have just assumed that he would want complete control over it and would want to do it himself, or to hire like a young, hungry director. But instead, he wanted to bring somebody in that had that experience with working with actors and making films. And I don't know, like I really love that idea of going to, your teacher who's like several decades your senior, and just being like, hey, like, thanks for all that teaching. You can direct my sequel now. And it's interesting.
Yeah, that is an interesting dynamic. I mean, it must feel like, triumphantly coming home almost, coming back to the film school and being like, look what I got, From everything that Irvin Kershner said, he has this great attitude about making a movie that was like extremely difficult to make. And he even I think he opens the commentary by saying that the best advice that Lucas gave him before making the film was that nothing is going to work. Just assume that nothing will work. And he's like, that's the best advice that I ever got. Because I guess it just gave him that ability to approach it, just kind of knowing, all of these effects were kind of be like the shark in Jaws. It's never going to really work. And you're going to have to figure out a way to work around it, and bring your, director's intuition to it to work around that. So the development of this movie, interestingly enough, around the time that Lucas was, I think, putting together the story for this, was also around the time that he announced that he intended to do 6 films. And The Empire Strikes Back is the first Star Wars movie, the first new Star Wars movie to open with that episode 5. When you guys first saw that episode 4, episode 5, what was your reaction to finding out that 1, 2, and 3 didn't exist at that point?
I didn't notice it. I honestly, to be honest, I didn't really notice episode 1, 4, or 5 up until the prequels. That's when I was like, wait, those they're episodes? Like, I had no idea at all.
You're like, episode IV? What does this mean?
Yeah. Yeah, because I didn't know my Roman numerals up until junior high school.
Yeah, it's weird because the episode numbers were kind of like, I think in a lot of ways it gave me this sort of misconception that Lucas was sort of like this god who had like these tablets of Moses kind of, and was just like, okay, you guys, you people are ready for part 5 of my opus, but I'm waiting, I'm holding back 1 through 3 because you guys aren't ready for this brilliance. And then you see the prequels and you're like, oh, okay.
I remember that was actually like a pretty instrumental part of the promotional angle of the special edition, and then leading into the prequels. I mean, you'd see these clips of George Lucas on like Dateline or 2020 or something like that, and they'd be like, so when do these first 3 episodes come out? And he's like, I have it all, it's all in a notebook somewhere, and like it's very evocative. And I think when I did see Star Wars the first time, I'd already kind of drank the Kool-Aid on that, but I hadn't like dived into Star Wars myself yet. So I was very much like, these are coming from on high, like you said, like these stone tablets.
Yeah, he's waiting for Mace Windu to deliver the Journal of the Wills to him. And
yeah, right.
So when Lucas made this film, the reason why he didn't direct it was because he wanted to be a producer on it. Basically, he was reinvesting his wealth that he accumulated on A New Hope. And he was on this really tight timeline where he had to release, I think they had to be in production on a sequel to A New Hope by 1979. Otherwise, the rights were going to revert back to Fox. So you imagine Fox is over there just like really hoping that he's going to fuck this up, and that they'll get the rights are going to revert back to them. And so Lucas like wasted no time developing the sequel. And I think that's why he decided like, oh, I should hire a director to come in and make this film so I can like be, focused on the business side of this. The other weird thing that happened on this movie was that Gary Kurtz, who produced A New Hope and produced American Graffiti and also produced this film, they're basically taking Lucas's money, and they had a budget of $18 million, which I think is like double the amount that A New Hope was, but it ballooned to $33 million. And it went so over budget that Lucas had to actually have Fox co-sign with the bank so that they would give him more money to finish making the movie. And he was so humiliated by that he fired Gary Kurtz. He's like, well, I'm not having this guy in my next movie. And a lot of people have seen that as like kind of the moment where things went off the rail with Star Wars, as like, oh, you fired the guy that was, really kind of reining you in and just replaced him with a yes man. But I don't know. I got to say, if somebody takes $18 million of my money and then it turns into $33 million of my money in like 1980s money, like, I don't know, I might fire him too.
Yeah, I could see that. But then again, you have to remember that $33 million made Empire Strikes Back pretty badass with all that money they spent on those special effects and all that. So it's a hindsight thing, right? It's a 2020 thing. You have to see, okay, you have to weigh, all right, was this worth the risk? But then again, I'm not George Lucas, so that's all. Who knows what kind of relationship they had when it came down to that kind of thing.
This film is really the thing that made Star Wars. Like, A New Hope was like, oh, we didn't expect this to happen. Can lightning possibly strike twice in the same place? And, it seems like a foregone conclusion now, but I think at the time, the fact that he reinvested every penny into Empire and was even saying in interviews at the time, he's like, if this movie isn't a huge success like the first movie, I'm going to be paying off the debt that I owe to the bank for the rest of my life. And I can't imagine that pressure of like, you could have retired on A New Hope, but instead you doubled down on it. And, again, that idea of reinvesting in your own ideas, in your own IP is it's something that Lucas doesn't get enough credit for in having that faith in his own ideas.
Yeah, I think the best route to go is to create your own IP, because that's what that's one of the positive things about living in America, is that you can create your own intellectual property and you could essentially find a lot of success with it, be it a small children's book or a series. Doesn't really matter. If you created it, it's yours. It belongs to you. It doesn't belong to anybody else. And if you choose to sell it or if you choose to license it out, you have your right to do that. And I think George Lucas definitely, gave the bird to Hollywood and says, I'm going to do my own thing and you guys can't stop me. You guys can't stop me because you guys didn't have faith in me. And I just proved to you that I have a property here that can sell. Not only sell tickets to the box office, but sells toys and merchandise.
This was we were kind of talking about this in the story section as well. But I mean, we've been aware for a long time that it's, the follow-up of Empire that really made Star Wars what it was. And it would have been so easy to make A New Hope Part 2, like episode 5 in the pulp saga of like just a shoot 'em up space opera, and like all the character development and the cliffhanger ending and the archetypal ideas in Empire are really what elevated this so much that even though I consider this movie to be the peak and we didn't see that high again, like it's still just so elevated by that 1-2 punch of A New Hope and Empire.
It's one of the reasons why I have a hard time usually saying that Empire is better than A New Hope, because I feel like, so much of the reason why Empire succeeds is because of the groundwork that was done in A New Hope. And that's not easy to do. But in a way, I think it's actually harder to make a better film. And to that extent, I think that Empire should actually be shouted out as being like up there with films like The Godfather Part 2 and The Dark Knight and Terminator 2 that take everything that came before and just perfect it, make it better. And I think it's because of how good this movie is that people do tend to underrate A New Hope and maybe give it like a 9 out of 10 instead of a 10 out of 10. But, I won't fault them too much for that. Julius. Weirdly enough, this movie, when it came out, got mixed reviews. Whoa. And I find that interesting because currently on Rotten Tomatoes, it has a 94% critic rating. But at the time, I guess when you didn't have like the internet and aggregator sites and all of that stuff, I guess that a lot of critics misinterpreted this movie as being a cop-out. They're like, this is just an advertisement for a third movie. And they had kind of a similar reaction to me when I saw it for the first time, where I was like, I don't think I liked this movie because I didn't get any resolution. And critics who should know better, like, interpreted this as Lucas kind of copping out and not actually making a full self-contained movie. And I don't know, I find that really interesting that this movie got kind of bad reviews at the time.
Yeah, it's a matter of perspective, really. That's why I can't listen to any more critics today. Like anyone who calls himself a legit film critic, I just mute them, I ignore them, because a lot of the time they have no idea what they're talking about.
I still do follow at least like critical consensus, and I find it just to be kind of like really good at sort of figuring out like the historical context of a movie. But I do think that circa 1980, critics have been listening to people talk about Star Wars for 3 years, and they were probably still sick of it at that point. So
Yeah,
I honestly think they probably filed their review before they even saw the movie. They're just like, you know what? I know I'm not going to like this movie, so I'm just going to file my bad review, go see this stupid movie, and then move on with my life. And, its reputation grew into now being 94%, like I said, on Rotten Tomatoes with a 97% audience score. This movie
I'm not surprised.
This movie is the 15th highest rated movie on IMDb, the 22nd highest rated on Letterboxd, by far the highest rated Star Wars movie. And I honestly, I think it deserves it.
I'm surprised it's not 100%, to be honest with you. I'm surprised the audience score is not at 100%.
I think they still have like the negative, like New York Times, whatever, Vincent Canby review or whatever it is that, who gave it the bad review. But yeah, I mean, it didn't get a lot of love at the Oscars. It was only nominated. It was only nominated for 3 awards this time, and it only took home 1 for sound, which, look, fine, I get it's a sequel. I'm sure the Academy was sick of Star Wars. I'm sure they were tired of Lucas being rich. I'm sure all of those things factored in. But to not give this movie best score, I think this movie has the greatest score I have ever heard in a movie.
Yeah, agreed.
I like this one better than A New Hope, which is also very strong. This is just the pinnacle, and the score is part of, like what I was saying, the symphonic nature of this film that's obviously a big part of what makes it like that.
There are moments in this score, just like little moments in the score, like nuances that are these incredible themes that would just put like any of the modern music scores that you get for like the Marvel films and stuff like to shame. Like a lot of those scores are just like very anonymous and incidental. They don't really have big themes. And this movie is filled with them. It takes everything that was great in A New Hope and then like adds the Imperial March. Williams just had that in his back pocket. The Yoda theme, the Leia and Han romance theme. It's just incredible. In addition to everything else going on in it, it's fantastic.
Yeah, definitely Lucas for sure channeled Sergio Leone and Arione Morricone's musical cues for Once Upon a Time in the West. Because upon watching Once Upon a Time in the West for the first time, when I was maybe 20, maybe I must have been 24, 25 when I first watched that film, I just remember thinking like, oh, wow, I wonder if Lucas actually like used this. And sure enough, I looked into it, and yeah, he actually did use Once Upon a Time in the West to kind of show Williams, like, this is what I want for Star Wars. I want each character to have their own theme when they enter the screen. And of course, Williams like got it, and then he, the rest is history. So yeah, it was great. It was cool that Lucas understood the power of musical cues when introducing characters on the screen, and which I think is a lost art today. And you mentioned Marvel movies. We know the Avengers theme song, but it would have been nice if maybe each character had their own little theme music within score, I should say, within the film. But it is what it is.
According to like Marvel heads, like they do, I just don't notice them because they just feel so anonymous,
exactly.
And
yeah,
I'll hear people mention like, oh, Black Widow's theme or Hawkeye's. And I'm like, what are you talking about? It's all just the same kind of like,
exactly.
Propulsive incidental score that I'm used to hearing in every Marvel movie. But yeah, I mean, not to drag those movies because I think that they do have some interesting scores. Like, and I do love the Avengers theme. But yeah, it's something I miss with modern movies is like this like symphonic score that has individual themes for characters. It really helps to underline who that character is. You get a real sense of who they are and in tone and everything else.
Have you guys ever listened to The Planet by Gustav Holst?
No.
Hope I'm pronouncing his name right. It was one of the inspirations for the Imperial March. And I mean, that's one of the brilliant things about the score is that it really works on its own in like the classical sphere as like a legitimate composition on its own. It's part of the canon of classical music these days.
Yeah, absolutely. And it immediately sets a specific tone. Like if you decide to chime it in when like the president is walking to the podium, you would immediately have this vibe of like, oh, this isn't good.
Yeah.
So before we move on to awards and demerits, do you guys have anything else that you want to add?
I had one random thing. You were starting to kind of allude to this. In this in Empire, we have an A plot and a B plot, whereas in A New Hope there was just one through line through that whole film, and then in Return of the Jedi we have like an A, B, and C plot, or at least we have 3 different situations in like towards the end of that film, and I believe that continues on where in A Phantom Menace we have like essentially like 4 different groups. And then does that even extend to Attack of the Clones, where there's like possibly 5 different groups going on in the Battle of Geonosis?
There might be. I was actually just thinking how amazing it would be if that was like imposed on every subsequent movie, that they had to add an additional, so that by the time you get to the 20th one, you've got 20 different things going on. And
yeah, which was a George Lucas staple, I noticed. Because in American Graffiti, there's multiple stories going on in American Graffiti. I don't know if THX 113 had the same deal or not.
I think it's just the standard, like you have antagonists chasing THX, but it's focused on THX.
Yeah, you're right. And I think George Lucas kind of mastered that the chasing and the multiple stories going on at once, because that's very much his style. I've noticed when I watched the prequels again a few months ago, I realized, oh, okay, so he's a fan of like, jumping around and kind of seeing what's going on in different places. And like you mentioned, the new trilogy, the Disney-owned trilogy. And I think, I think Abrams tried to capture that. And it's like, you're not good at that, bro. Like, you're good at what you do. Stick to what you do, because that's what makes you unique. That's what gets people to like your movies. That's why I liked his movies for a long time, up until when he directed Star Wars.
Yeah, it's one of those things where not even just with having multiple plot lines in various stages of resolution in your third act, which is something that these movies do perfect as they go on. It's definitely a big part of this trilogy. But, also one of the things that you don't really have in A New Hope is this idea that there's some kind of like overarching mystery that is a big part of what is a big part of the storytelling. And it's something that I actually think that future films will struggle with in the Star Wars canon, is trying to recapture that Vader reveal, trying to have like, oh, you thought it was this, but it turns out no, this person's actually this person's daughter, or this person's son, or that's the father of this person. And every time it happens, it's just like kind of like less and less convincing. And it's one of those things that I kind of wish only Empire had done.
Right. Yeah. And before we move on, I just want to briefly mention Frank Oz's puppetry work was top notch, like phenomenal. Because even though it's aged a little bit, I still found myself entertained by a guy moving the puppet around and pretending to be an old gremlin, gremlin-like creature. And I have to say, Frank Oz just did a phenomenal work making Yoda feel real in the movie. And the way he voiced him, he also was the voice of Yoda too, right?
He was, yeah.
I don't think he gets enough credit for his work on Yoda. When people talk the Empire, when they talk Empire, they don't really talk about Frank Oz's work as playing Yoda as a puppet.
Apparently Lucas petitioned to get him nominated for an Oscar, and the Oscar said, oh no, like that's not a real performance. It's puppetry. And which made, I guess, Lucas resent the Oscars even more. It's funny watching the movie now, and especially knowing how much Yoda would be digitized in the prequels, and getting rid of those sort of imperfections in the puppetry. It's again an example, I think, of Lucas sort of like losing sight of what it is he's trying to do, is that so much of the charm of Yoda is kind of similar to like E.T. Like, it's a puppet. It moves like a puppet. It's incredible that this performance is so convincing you don't care. It's just like when you know that like a character or an actor is under a bunch of makeup, it's what they do with that. Right. And, can they make you suspend your disbelief long enough? And yeah, with Yoda, watching behind the scenes stuff where you get an idea of how much of a disaster Yoda could have been.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I definitely agree. It's one of the most effective things in Star Wars. All right, let's move on to awards and demerits. Best ship or vehicle, Julius.
Darth Vader's Executor.
Amazing Star Destroyer.
Yeah, that was the only ship that stuck out to me upon watching it last night. And I was going, man, what a ship. That's a great looking ship. And I never noticed it before. They introduced it and whatnot, but I never really paid attention to it growing up. But now I'm like, dude, that's a badass ship. And I can see why Darth Vader, owns that ship, because he deserves the best when he's one of the highest ranking members of the Empire.
I love the way it's introduced too, with casting a shadow on these puny Star Destroyers.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's also interesting to me that, you're kind of in a way responsible for the Death Star getting blown up. So Palpatine rewards you with the biggest Star Destroyer in the galaxy. Like, I don't know, they've got a weird relationship.
The Executor is great. I was gonna go with Slave One.
That was my pick.
Yeah, I mean I almost feel like it's kind of cliche. I mean, like, Boba Fett has this great like character design, but he never really does anything in the actual films. But I mean, it's like this weird ship that lands like laying down, but then it's like standing up in space. There's a lot to love.
When that Slave One flies across the camera, when it's chasing after the Millennium Falcon, like, it's such a badass looking ship.
Yeah. Which, by the way, I might add, wasn't he a little too close to Millennium Falcon where Han Solo could have picked up his like the fact, hey, we're being followed by a ship?
I mean, he was distracted. Like, they finally turned 3PO off and got some alone time. So I don't know, maybe his mind was Okay, best weapon, gadget, or tech, Joseph?
I thought like carbon freezing is really interesting. It's like very evocative of, because like apparently they're not even really, it's not even used for what it got used for in this film. And it just seems like some weird, strange technology that's like, it's not even advanced. It's just different.
I was wondering about that while watching the film. I was like, they keep talking up this novel concept of putting a person in carbonite. Why would you risk that? And I was trying to think, well, what the hell are you guys freezing in carbon? Is it like gas that they're freezing in carbon?
Must be. I mean, it's a gas mine, right?
Okay, so to capture gas, you need to put it in carbonite, I guess.
Yeah, maybe that kind of works, I guess.
All right. Interesting. Julius, what did you get?
The same. Because I thought about it too. I was like, wow, what is that? But then, of course, when the Mandalorian came out, that was a major staple on the show, so it became a thing.
Yeah, it caught on really quick in the galaxy. They were like, hey, we should start doing that in the bounty hunter community.
Yeah, word spreads like, wow, you can put people in them. Oh, cool. All right, sweet.
I picked the thing that intrigued me from a young age and like made me want to live in the Star Wars universe, which is robotic limbs.
Oh, yeah, you're right. And yeah,
that's the thing I want the most. If you tell me, like, I mean, yeah, it kind of sucks to lose your real hand, but knowing that you can just replace it with a robot one, that's pretty cool.
And be able to feel pain.
Exactly. Yeah.
It's an interesting kind of like light side reflection of Vader too. And it really helps that duality kind of theme.
Yeah, definitely. And that comes up, I think it's even like explicit in Return of the Jedi, the sort of like duality there. Okay, best droid, Joseph.
I hope it's not too obvious to pick R2-D2, but this was a great film for him. I thought he filled in well as like Luke's silent co-pilot, and then he also was fun, wandering around in like the lagoon in Dagobah and having a little fun.
Julius, what's yours?
He had a small part, but for some reason I was always fascinated by his design. Lobot.
Lobot.
Yeah,
he's cool.
Lobot. Very intriguing character, and I wish I would have seen more of this character. It was enough screen time, obviously, because there's not much you could do with that. But I just always liked his look. I always liked the fact that it was just like, I don't know the actor's name who played him, but he played him to a T. Where it's like this loyal, I guess, cyborg, or he must have been a cyborg, right? Not a complete droid.
My thought was always that maybe he had like some kind of like bionic extension that was like put on his head, kind of like, I don't know, like Data or something from from Star Trek, just like something maybe he
Yeah.
couldn't hear anymore or something. I don't know if
Right.
it's like full, but it is cool that like Lando could just page him at any time,
Yeah.
whether he needs help or like a cup of coffee, just like, you know, beep, 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 beep.
Right.
In a lesser movie, he would like have to be a plot element, but in this, it's just part of what makes Star Wars so rich and mysterious.
Right. Yeah. There's so many things that we like probably glossed over that we didn't think of because it's just filled with so much. I kind of cheated on this one and went with a really obvious pick, but I have a reason. I picked C-3PO, and I did because he is so funny in this movie. I love the ongoing gags about the odds that they're going to survive something. It's such a great recurring gag that's, you know, in the script, and it's so good. But also, I mean, I feel like in so many ways, like I relate to 3PO in this movie more than any character in Star Wars. I'm always the one that's like, yeah, you guys should go check that out. I'll watch the ship. That's always my MO. Like, just stay out of danger, let everyone handle it, complain the whole time, and that's what I do. Okay, best alien or creature, Julius.
Bosk, the reptilian bounty hunter.
Bosk.
Yeah, I'm always going for the underdogs. I'm always going for the people who get the characters that have like the brief appearances in the movie, because like Joseph just said earlier, it's part of the Star Wars mystery, and you want to know more about this character just simply by, you know, seeing the character's feet, and then it pans up and you see this reptilian freaking bounty hunter looking down and you're going like, what? What's up? Are you talking smack?
That's funny. I actually had Bosk as like my second pick, just in case. He's just so fully formed in about 3 seconds of airtime. But I mean,
yeah,
again, is it too obvious to pick Yoda? I mean, this character, let's just take all the other films out of it. Just this character right here in Empire is so rich and fully formed, evocative. He makes the second act of this film. And upon rewatch again, I thought it was just so rich in like meaning and just like potency, like I said earlier. Yeah. Like his character is carrying so much of the weight of this film.
Yeah, I had Yoda as well, just for, you know, the reason that you basically gave. You said that not only does he dominate the second act of this movie, he dominates the second act of this trilogy. Like, how can you top Obi-Wan? Yoda's the way that you top Obi-Wan. I mean, I do think that in terms of just like your Jedi mentor, I gravitate towards Yoda in this film a lot more. I do think you have a little bit of the brand getting diluted when you see him in the prequels, and he's just kind of a piece of shit in that trilogy. But at least in this movie, he's amazing. And he's, I don't know. I guess it took him like nearly his entire life to stop being an asshole, but before he finally figured it out. But
yeah, I mean, like, you know, we have Obi-Wan in the first film, and he's a fighter, but I mean, you know, I think part of what makes Yoda so great is that he has this like paradoxical, like almost like judo relationship with the Force, where he doesn't even need to fight. That's how elevated he is.
Yes.
And it's unfortunate that like they dilute that in the prequels so much.
I'm definitely exaggerating. I love Yoda even in the prequels, but even though it's absolutely, and I don't want to step on Attack of the Clones too much, but it is one of those things where you're like, oh my God, I've always wanted to see this. And then you see it and you're like, I wish I never saw it. Okay. Best location or planet, Joseph?
Cloud City. I mean, I just love, like, not only is there this like bright utopian top to it, but then just like the bottom seedy part of it is so evocative. There's just like so many little nooks and crannies in there. There's just like all this leftover equipment. You don't even know what it was used for, but it's just so rich.
I picked Cloud City as well. And specifically, I kind of want to, you know, take the Star Tours ride and, you know, go visit Cloud City and hang out in that penthouse that Leia and Han are in, because that just seems like you got a whole view of this city. It's like, that seems like a really cool place to stay if you're not hiding out from the Empire. What did you get, Julius?
I chose Dagobah, mainly because I just love the fact that symbolically speaking, it's kind of Luke's mindset. It's still dark, still swampy. He still needs to like get through all the swamp to get to the, I guess, the light of the Force, right? So I love that when Lucas and Kasdan wrote this sequence, that they had to put him in a setting like that, so that way it could feel like it's tough to get through to become a good guy in the forest, right? So you have to go through swamp and darkness to get there, and I loved it. And not only that, but it's so fitting to Yoda's character as well. Like you would find a creature like that at a place like that, like Dagobah.
Yeah, it's in the same way that I think Hoth is kind of a thing, like it looks very aesthetically interesting. It's very white in Dagobah. It's very, murky earth tones. They're both places I don't think I'd ever want to visit, which is why they weren't my pick. Right. But it's funny that you mentioned it more from like a thematic perspective, because I think that it was deliberate to actually have like these different like visual motifs, to have the beginning of the film kind of be like all white, and then have the middle of it be more of the murky earth tones, and then you end up in like the reds of Cloud City. Ultimately, you have the orange blue glow of the carbon freeze chamber where they Vader and Luke have their duel. And I think I heard somebody mention that it's kind of like the whole movie sort of a descent into hell. You start in heaven and you end in hell, which I think is an interesting perspective to have.
Speaking of hell, it's funny how hell exists in Star Wars universe when Han Solo's like, then I'll see you in hell.
Yes, I'm glad you brought that up. I think it might have been because of my sort of religious upbringing, but that actually had a huge impact on me when I saw The Empire Strikes Back. I was like, there's a hell in Star Wars? And yeah, just because of an offhanded thing that might have even been like an improv line by Harrison Ford. It's like, yo, you just blew this thing wide open, because like, now there's hell. Does that mean there's heaven? Exactly, come on. Yeah. Okay. Most satisfying kill or death, Julius.
One of the many things that I guess benefited the special edition was to shoot additional scenes. Because I remember as a kid watching the original one, I was always left unsatisfied just to see the arm of this creature and actually see the creature, because I wanted to see the creature personally. So that was one of the things I actually did like from the special editions, that they shot the creature and actually you could see the creature, what it's doing, and actually chase after Luke as he's trying to get the lightsaber to break free from the cave. So and of course it was satisfying to see the arm, him missing the arm and screaming and all that stuff. So that was great. I love that. I thought that was a very satisfying addition to the special edition. And also I want to add, my little girl, she wasn't watching the movie. She was playing with their toys while I was watching the movie. And the scene when he's eating the meat, the piece of meat, she looks up and she goes, "Lion?" And I was like, yeah, that actually is a sound of a lion. Like, oh, I can't believe you caught that.
Oh, that's funny. Bringing up the because we didn't really talk about the special editions in this one, because I think that this one has like the least controversial editions of the original trilogy. And actually, adding the Wampa, weirdly enough, first it's seamless. It's a seamless addition, but it's very like un-Lucas to not make him a full cartoon character like you think he would be. And I also have you guys watched the deleted scenes?
Yes, I saw that. Yeah, I saw are you talking about the scene where they have him in the room and they release him and he just kills all the stormtroopers?
Yeah, I was watching that last night, and it's kind of incredible, like how easily all of this could have been terrible. Because when you look at those early Wampa designs and execution, it's just like, it's the kind of thing you'd think kids would design and shoot with video cameras. It's so bad. Joseph, what did you get?
Admiral Ozzel dying is just hilarious. And just like the idea that Darth Vader is such a badass, he's just like tearing through admirals and captains left and right is just very funny.
Yeah, I mean, you have to imagine, like, those are career guys. They've been in the Empire for a super long time, and they've, they should have a pension and everything. And just Vader's just like, nope. Did Ozzel have a wife? What do they let his wife know about all of that? Like, yeah, he failed and Vader killed him, like, but hey, we have a good benefits package, I don't.
No, I would imagine it was more like kind of like how oppressive regimes work, which is they lie and they say, oh, he died in battle bravely against the scum, the rebellion scum. So here's a couple of 100 million credits, Empire credits, and thank you for your service.
I kind of believe that Vader's evil enough that not only would they lie about it, but they would actually say, like, it turns out he was a traitor to the Empire and you get nothing. In fact, you go to prison.
Yeah, that's more like it. That's more like it.
I actually picked Admiral Ozzel for most satisfying kill and also for best force move, because I've always thought when he chokes him in the video, it's one of the funniest moments in the film. It's horrifying, but it's horrifying in that way that you just can't help but laugh. So yeah, I picked Admiral Ozzel for both categories. Joseph, what did you get for best force move?
I had Yoda pulling the X-Wing out of the lagoon, which is obviously like an iconic scene and it's like rich with meaning and all that. But, you know, like just going back to Vader force choking somebody over video chat is like just a supreme flex. Like, I mean, if you actually think about it, he's like basically pointing out, okay, that ship is like this many meters that way, and I'm just gonna pick this one little this one room on that Star Destroyer. You think you can hide from me? I will choke you anywhere.
The implications of that are tremendous, because when I first saw Empire, I was like, so wait a minute, you could like literally FaceTime didn't exist, but you could FaceTime a person you don't like and then just choke them out. Like, that's insane. Like, but do you need the FaceTime to do it? Can you just reach out in the Force to do it? And if you could do that, I don't know.
He's an evil dude.
Yeah, for sure. Julius, what did you get for force move?
Luke calling for Leia. I thought that was a great indicator that he's grown as a character, even though he didn't train as long with Yoda. It is something that he still picked up, and the fact that he tried it on Leia gave a little clue to the viewer, saying, hey, Leia could also be a Jedi if she was able to hear Luke when he was calling for her. And I thought that was a cool, like, all right, like Luke's getting powerful. Like, yeah, he's literally on death's door. Like, he's literally one step away from death. And yet he still is able to have his wits about him and actually call for Leia, and then have Leia, which was a great close-up scene of her face, just like really losing herself and going, Luke, oh, we got to turn around. We got to get him. I know where he's at.
It's also like one of those great decisions that like Kirshner makes with his filmmaking. Is I love the way, like, when he reaches out in the Force to Leia, and you mentioned that close-up of Leia, but it actually starts, I believe, as like a pan from something else. And I think he racks focus into Leia in this way, right, that is just, it's so clearly communicated. And it's one of those like really ingenious director moves that A New Hope didn't have a lot of that kind of intuition in it. Right. But like, yeah, it's one of those things that like when it happens, it's profound. It's very much similar. And Kirshner mentions this when he talks about the reveal of Vader, that they weren't allowed to tell the actors. I guess Mark Hamill was the only one that knew about it. But David Prowse, when he delivered the line, he delivered a different line. But Kirshner was like very precise in the way that line was delivered. And Prowse was like, why am I doing this dumb line this way? Like, I don't understand it. Right. But yet when you watch it, it's so effective the way it's delivered when he says, no, I am your father. And there's like actually like a ton of, I don't know, like regret in his voice when he says it. It's weighty when he says it. And yeah, going back to Luke reaching out to Leia, that's something that we never brought up, that it's implied in this film that there is another out there, which I don't know. To me at the time, I can't remember exactly what my reaction was, but when he does reach out to Leia, I don't know if I knew that Leia was his sister at that moment, but I remember thinking like, oh, wow, this is so great. Like Leia also has this power too. And I thought that was so interesting as a kid.
Yeah, as a kid, I didn't put that two and two together. I just thought like, wow, Leia actually she has the capabilities of using the Force too. That's cool. I like that idea. But then of course we find out in Jedi.
Makes the kiss early in the movie kind of awkward. Yeah. Okay. Supporting character most deserving of their own spinoff. Joseph.
You know what I want to see? I want to see some of the 800 years of Yoda training Jedi. Ooh. I can't get enough of his, like, his like kind of, Jedi master kind of thing that he's doing in that second act.
That's cool.
It works as like a cinematic thing. And it also just like completely ties into the, like the roots of the like Joseph Campbell Carl Jung kind of like lineage of thought that these movies come from.
Also, in terms of just having enough material for like 800 seasons of television, you can just have it be 1 year in the life of Yoda for, basically the next 800 years.
Come on, Kathleen.
Yeah, that'd be great. I would love to see that too. That'd be cool. I didn't even think about that, but that'd be awesome to see. In fact, I even thought about it too when they keep mentioning another retcon in the Empire movie, which was they implied that Yoda was the one who trained Obi-Wan. And I was thinking about, man, that would have been kind of interesting to see Yoda and Obi-Wan in episode 1 traveling together and going on adventures together. That would have been interesting to see instead of Qui-Gon, which is nothing against Qui-Gon Jinn, the character, but it would have been cooler to see if Yoda and Obi-Wan were like the Padawan and the Master, and they're both traveling to the Federation to negotiate peace or whatever. That would have been cool. I would have loved to have seen that instead of Qui-Gon Jinn.
Yeah, I have a lot of mixed feelings about how effective having Obi-Wan be the age that he was in Phantom Menace, and also having like a kind of, old mentor figure in Qui-Gon. Like I've always felt that kind of like complicated the story in ways that wasn't really necessary. But then again, I love Qui-Gon Jinn so much that I wouldn't want to ever risk losing that. But yeah, I know exactly what you mean. What was your pick, Julius?
Bosk
again.
Yeah, I want to see the spinoff of Bosk, just like the last podcast we talked about Greedo and how I wanted a spinoff from to showcase Greedo, but now with this one, Empire, Bosk is definitely a character I would love to see. I would like to explore.
Just want to bask in the glory.
Yeah, exactly. His backstory. Yeah, and I would love to watch that, to see, where this character came from, where this character goes after Empire, and what life is like for this bounty hunter after the Empire falls. So yeah, I would love to see that personally.
I picked Lando Calrissian because, I love Lando, and also Billy D. Williams is always going to be Lando to me, but I loved Donald Glover's performance.
Yeah, he did a great job
as Lando in Solo, and I would love to see like just a ton of TV shows where Lando's featured. I want to see him meeting Lobot for the first time, and like how they took over Cloud City. And I think it's implied in, post Return of the Jedi that Lando is like super rich after the events of Return of the Jedi. He because I can't remember what his full name is. In fact, I want to look that up.
It's not Lando Calrissian. It's actually more.
Yeah, his full name is Baron Landonus Balthasar Lando Calrissian III.
Oh, damn. Okay.
But fitting.
All right.
It implies wealth, right? It implies this guy's got a lot of resources.
Yeah,
that's
especially if he's the third.
Yeah, right?
His demeanor makes a lot more sense if you're coming with a name like that.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, best character overall, Julius.
Oh, Yoda. Yoda for me was the best character overall for Empire. Because like Joseph said earlier, he made the movie. He added to what Obi-Wan introduced in A New Hope to audiences, which is the ideas of the Force and the Jedi Knight. And now with Yoda, you see it in action, as opposed to not totally in action, because I know Obi-Wan used Jedi mind tricks and whatnot in New Hope, but this one he explained like it doesn't matter about the size. It doesn't matter how buff or strong you are. It's up here. It's up here and it's in here that matters in terms of how powerful you can be and how powerful the Force can be if you use it right. And Yoda for me was the best overall character in the film.
Yeah, that's a great pick. It's a great pick. Joseph, what'd you get?
Darth Vader. I mean, this is his film. It's his chance to make good on the gravitas of his like character design, his suit, and the reputation that he carries with him. He's the driving force of the plot in this film, and you really get to see just him at his maximum.
Yeah, he lives up to his character in so many ways, and I don't think it was easy at the time that The Empire Strikes Back was in development to find that balance with his character of still making him a character that you're not just completely repelled by, that you're actually still invested in, and not have him go like full mustache twirling villain, even though he is killing admirals left and right. It is a very interesting thing that this movie does, that it takes like someone who's such an iconic looking villain in the first movie and then make him just an iconic villain in the second film as just being like an antagonist that is fully worthy of your protagonist. And in a way, you're almost kind of rooting for him in a way because he is so good at what he does. He was my pick as well. And yeah, I mean, Yoda is a close second, and it's just hard to choose between the two of them, especially in a movie where you've also got Han Solo and Leia and Lando and, hey, even Luke to some extent. But yeah, I mean, it's just like there are so many great characters in this movie, but it seems to me that like Vader, more so than any other film or iteration of the character, he is absolutely at his peak in this film. And that's why he was my pick as well. All right, best quote, Julius.
Okay, I'm gonna build this up a little bit. I'm a huge fan of the romantic scene between Leia and Han Solo when he's rubbing her hands and she's getting nervous and he's getting closer and closer and the music's, peaking up and up and up. And then when they finally embrace and they kiss for the first time and you realize, well, the viewer anyway, realizes they're in love. Like, that's it. It's done. Like, Luke Skywalker is friend zoned. It's all about Han and Leia now.
Eternally friend zoned.
Let's go for it. And then CPO comes right after and says, I've isolated the reverse power flux coupling. And I lost it. I was like, dude, that I can't believe I never like caught that line. And it was a perfect line to have a character say right after, these two characters who are there's a lot of tension there. Finally have their moment. And then here comes a freaking android saying, I've isolated the reverse power flux coupling. And I thought it was fantastic. So that was my favorite line, my best quote in the movie.
And he's so excited and eager for approval. And he's always coming in at the wrong moment, which is why I think I relate to him so much. Like, I totally get it. And yeah, it actually might be the funniest moment in any Star Wars movie to me is that moment, because Han has been working so hard, working every bit of charm on Leia, and then he finally gets what he's looking for, and C-3PO just drops in and ruins it for him. Yeah, that's a great pick.
Credit to Kasdan and Lucas for writing that one line, because that really made the scene icing on the cake. Perfect.
I agree. My favorite quote is, again, it's one of the most boring quotes in all of Star Wars because it's quoted so much, but try not, do or do not, there is no try, is a line that even as a kid, when like movie lines that weren't like Arnold Schwarzenegger being a badass, like those were like the only lines that would ever register to me as a kid, I'll be back, or variations on things like that. But that level of wisdom like hit me even as a young kid, and it stayed with me like throughout my life. And like, these movies are definitely like, I think that a lot of people had that experience at a young age with these films. And I don't know, like Yoda's got a ton of great lines in this movie, and maybe even better ones than that one. But that was one that just stood out to me even at a young age. It's like, whoa, stop me in my tracks. That's like something I could that's advice I could use in my own life.
Yeah, everyone could relate to that line.
This just shows like how many great lines there are in this film. I was kind of wanting to go last because I had a couple picked out, and I kind of thought you guys would be picking the same lines, but so I had a couple reserve ones. But I would say like overall my favorite line in this film is just such an iconic line that just gives me chills when I hear it. But when Yoda's talking about judge me by my size, do you? And well, you should not. For my ally is the Force. And it's just like so great. It's just and then like the music comes in, and it's just one of the greatest moments in cinema history, I in my opinion.
I feel the same way. I feel like, in fact, just pretty much everything in that moment of Empire with Yoda is like some of the most iconic stuff and just defining stuff in all of Star Wars. And I'll just go ahead and give you guys my peak Star Wars moment first. And it's Yoda lifting the X-Wing. And there were a number of other things I thought going into this. In fact, the Vader reveal was my number one kind of going into the movie. I figured like, oh, that's just by default is going to be my number one. But it's the mixture of that, that philosophical monologue that Yoda has of Luke just being like, you expect the impossible, and marching off like an asshole.
Right.
And then Yoda just steps in. He's like, all right, if this is the only way this is going to get through your head, and he lifts that X-Wing, and that Williams score just like kicks in. And I think that might be my favorite moment in all of Star Wars. So yeah, I mean, hopefully I didn't step on your guys' picks, but yeah, that's my number one peak Star Wars moment. What'd you get, Julius?
The Darth Vader and Luke Skywalker duel. You know, that when he enters that room and Vader, the first thing Vader says is like, the Force is strong with you, but you ain't a Jedi yet. And I was like, ooh, here we go. You know, as a kid, I was like, here we go, man. Come on, Luke, you show that asshole who's boss. And that whole lightsaber duel was fantastic from beginning to end. You know, when he like leaps from that chamber, and you know, he looks up and says, "Oh, impressive! All right, this kid can go. He can actually go." And he, you know, stood up to Vader. He didn't blink, you know, in the face of death, essentially, because Vader could have killed him off at any time if he wanted, but Luke held his own. And of course, the peak was the reveal, and then Luke actually passing the test this time. He didn't fail. He decided to, you know, jump and not join his father and become like him. And that was great. That for me is peak Star Wars moment. That fight, that first lightsaber duel. Jedi comes close second, that second duel they have, but this one was the one for me. It was like, yeah, fuck yeah, Luke, you show him.
In terms of just how cinematic it looks, it's like a beautifully executed. I completely agree. Like the different movements of the fight and the battle, like as it's, you know, intercut with the rest of the action that's going on. It's also great to see like Luke get like a lot of good hits in there until you realize at the very end that Vader has been going like easy on him this entire time. And I like that you mentioned that when Luke decides to destroy himself as opposed to joining Vader, that's the moment where he finally doesn't fail. But it's also the moment where he, as a character, he hits rock bottom. Like that is his lowest. And he has to reach out in the Force to Leia to get saved. And he can't do any of this on his own. You know, and even to that point, the characters are relying on R2-D2 to, you know, to fix that hyperdrive. And you realize like
right.
They all had to work together to get to this moment, which is just, they still failed. You know, they still did not achieve anything they set out to in the beginning of the movie. Joseph, what was your pick?
No, I am your father.
That one specific moment.
I mean, it's just like that's the big reveal that the whole film turns on, and it's also, I think, a really interesting shared cultural moment that was happening at this time in history. I mean, like, you know, part of the phenomenon of Star Wars was people going to see it again and again, and the anticipation leading up to Empire, and then the big reveal and like the desire not to have spoilers and stuff. And I think this was all like Lucas was kind of surfing a wave of like this nascent pop culture that was going on at the time. And he kind of was like on the forefront of this.
Yeah. In a way, Lucas is responsible for spoiler culture. You know, I don't think anybody gave a shit about spoilers because spoil what, you know, like most of the most popular movies were based on material that people were already familiar with. And I mean, honestly, like, I feel like this entire movie just it's peak Star Wars. So,
oh yeah, there's so much, there's so many. We could do a 4 hour podcast on it alone because there's so much to unpack in this film.
I was thinking while I was watching the movie yesterday that this is one that I would have actually loved to just have the movie playing and comment on it like a commentary, because I feel like I'm forgetting so much because every scene has something in it that I kind of want to unpack and talk about. But yeah, we'd be here all day if we did that. So to conclude, let's get into our final thoughts and personal rating. I'm going to start with you, Joseph.
Like I said, this is my favorite Star Wars film. I was hoping to get this in there earlier, but I guess I forgot about it. It's been interesting to rewatch the original trilogy, kind of giving the prequels more credence and watching the 2003 Clone Wars. And I did watch Revenge of the Sith a while back there. And it's pretty interesting to like come through this again with the perspective that this is really the center. It's the middle of a story that was already in progress. And it holds up in that way. It still holds up compared to my original viewing of it. 10 out of 10, baby.
I think that with this film being not just like at the center, if you buy into this whole, Skywalker saga that they kind of threw out there when they were releasing Rise of Skywalker, that this is actually like a 9-film story, Empire falls right in the middle of that too. And yeah, it is kind of like the most decisive chapter of the entire saga. And it's great that in addition to all of the information that it puts out there, that it's also kind of the most fun to watch out of all of them. Like, even though the bad guys win at the end, like, this is the most exciting movie of the entire franchise. Like, start to finish, like, there's not a wasted scene in this entire thing. So I'm basically giving away that I'm giving this a 10. I mean, I think that's pretty much obvious. Julius, what are you going to give this one?
10, man.
Yeah.
It's an easy 10 for this one. The term cinematic experience, it gets thrown around a lot. This is truly a cinematic experience, a roller coaster ride, as they say. From beginning to end, it doesn't let up. You're taken into this adventure and you just go, and it almost feels like you're part of the adventure with these characters, which is why so many Star Wars fans latch on to these original trilogy films, because of how they felt. It brings the inner child out of you when you watch a movie like Empire specifically. And so, 10 for sure for me. It's a movie that I always watch again and again. I never get bored of it. I still genuinely laugh when I watch these films, even though I know what's happening, I know what they say. So it's just, 10 all around. And to the Academy for not even nominating for Best Film. Because it should have been nominated for Best Film, even if you don't want to nominate the actors, which is fine. But overall experience, the cinematic experience of Empire is a great film all around. It should have at least been nominated for Best Film.
I think it's just one of those things where the consolation prize was that they recognized the first movie to begin with. And after that, they're just like, I don't care if your sequel is on the level of Citizen Kane. We're not going to nominate you again. Get out of here.
I think part of that was they're probably resentful that Lucas went independent with it. I think that's probably what it was. That they were like, no, screw this guy. He doesn't want to play ball, so we won't nominate him for any of our categories because he's not willing to play ball within our system. And Lucas was like, I don't have to be part of your system. I made money, fool. Like, I made my money. I created this, not you.
I knew all of this stuff about Lucas back when I was younger, and that's kind of how I was introduced to him as a filmmaker. But I think as I get older and I look back at all of the risks that he took on these films and that he'll take on the prequels, it's pretty incredible the level of ambition that he had in just like taking all of the norms of filmmaking, of self-financing, of making sequels, and just in terms of having to to bail on being part of the Directors Guild by not opening the film with directed by George Lucas. Like, he had to go against all of those, various formalities to make the films that he wanted to make. And then I think that the culture tends to underrate these movies by saying like, oh, well, they're just popcorn films. But I think making a film this effective is as much of an achievement as any movie I've ever seen. So it's a 10 all around. And so it looks like our Breaking Canon average is going to be a perfect 10.
Perfect 10 for Empire.
I have a feeling that is never going to happen again. So
it's not. I can tell you right now, it's not.
Yeah. Do you guys have anything else you want to say about this movie before we call it?
It was fun to revisit this film. My favorite Star Wars film.
This is as good as Star Wars, and I think just as good as movies get. It sucks that it's all downhill from here. So. All right, guys, I think that about wraps things up. You can find more episodes of Star Wars Breaking Canon at breakingcanonpodcast.com. You can follow us on Twitter at SWBC Podcast. If you want to support our podcast, please rate and review us on iTunes or wherever you get your podcasts from. On the next episode of Star Wars Breaking Canon, we'll be discussing Star Wars Episode 6, Return of the Jedi. Until then, thanks for listening, and may the Force be with you.